true. Sometimes funny, sometimes it's sick.
Greetings and welcome to the Department of Tangents podcast, a conversation with comedian Billy D. Washington with new music from Birds. I've been a fan of Washington's for years. He can make you laugh in a lot of different ways, with political and socially conscious material, more everyday observational stuff, or behind a piano or a guitar. Last week, a post he wrote on Facebook caught my attention. Washington said he'd been watching all the new comedy specials coming out and decided he was going to, as he put it, compete again. And to be clear, he started around 1989 and he's never stopped doing it, but the practical concerns of raising two kids led him to concentrate on making a living rather than pushing for some sort of industry breakthrough. I think this happens a lot, and that there are a lot of talented comedians out there in a sort of stand-up middle class that doesn't get mentioned because, as Washington says in this interview, it's not really the sexy story. I wanted to explore it, though, and I got that and much more. Right off the bat, Washington talked about how mainstream black comedians who aren't famous have gotten squeezed out of work, and we explored the idea that maybe his versatility has worked against him in terms of the dreaded brand discussion. We get into some granular details about the comedy business here, things that I find fascinating. And if you don't know Washington, please check him out. And this week's featured track comes from a Brooklyn band called Birds, whose new album, Everything All at Once, is out on Friday. Take a listen after the conversation. And now, Billy D. Washington. So, we'll start here to sort of set a baseline. You are a comedian and currently based in Houston. What is your career like right now? What kinds of gigs are you doing?
I'm doing basically, everything I've been doing my entire career, but the proportion is just different. Like, I still do clubs, still do great clubs. I was just at the Comedy Works in Denver a couple of months ago, and I'll be doing Go Bananas in Cincinnati next month. I have a heavy cruise ship sort of schedule, which is sort of the new mecca almost for, at least for the economy of stand-up comedy.
Uh-huh.
And I'm doing short films and stuff like that, but it's still a full-time comedy schedule, and I'm able to be a hobbyist when it comes to my writing and my directing. So yeah, man, it's still a full entertainment schedule. It's just the proportion is different. It used to be, a bunch of weeks, 35 weeks of clubs, but that's not the case anymore. Between the extinction of the sort of the mainstream non-celebrity black comedian and the closing of clubs and the decline of the money, it's almost impossible to just kind of make a living the way I used to make a living, unless I get on Big Brother or something.
Well, you said the extinction of the non-famous black comedian. Is that the term you used?
Yeah, the non-famous, the non-celebrity mainstream black headliner.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time, Nick, when we used to be the commodity. Everybody wanted the black dude to put on the poster to draw the black people that did the mainstream material that could entertain everybody, which was at the time was a good business model. But as time went on, and I don't really begrudge anybody for the current models, but if normally the black people, for the most part, they're celebrity acts that come through now. I don't have to go through the name. You're a comedy guy, and again, I don't begrudge anybody. It's just the way things have shifted. So it's almost like somebody said, well, why do we need to add other black headliners when we pretty much fill our non-racist quota with black headliners that can draw black people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just it's the first I've sort of heard of the concept of that sort of disappearing. So I'm still trying to sort of process where that fits into how things have progressed.
Yeah, and the thing is, and because of that, like most of us, I'll just speak for myself. I'll say me and friends of cruise ships because, that seems to be a commodity there now. And, the money on cruise ships is more than competitive.
Right.
We get to build our fan bases the same exact way. It's not, these aren't your father's cruise ships. I mean, these are people who are comedy savvy. These are packed houses. There are 500 people on a Monday night for two shows, and it feeds the beast. I mean, it feeds the ego. It pays the bills. It builds the fan base, and a few downsides to the travel and to some of the accommodations, but that's there were downsides to the other side of it too. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, you made a post on Facebook on August 9th. Do you mind if I read it to give people sort of... It's really caught my attention. You said, first of all, I'm a huge comedy fan. The job is difficult, and I don't begrudge anyone's success. I'm not L.A., New York, but I've watched enough Netflix, Comedy Central, Showtime, ASX specials to know that I'm original and funny enough to compete, and I've just decided after years of complacency I'm going to compete again, so here I come again. What did you mean by that?
Well, I'd sit back. I mean, it's been on my mind for a while. I mean, I'll address each portion at a time.
Okay.
So one night I sat back and I watched these some Netflix specials and the comedians, and I've been seeing the comedians on CNN, the history of comedy. And to me, what struck me wasn't like I think the production value is great. I think it's a great series. But what struck me were the people sort of being interviewed. There are people that who I don't know and who haven't done nearly as much as in the business as I have. Uh-huh. And again, for whatever reason they got the gigs, or for whatever reason people get TV shows and whatever. That's great, but I can't sit back and be pissed off about it and not do anything about it. So that's sort of my angle now. When I see people on late night shows, I don't get jealous. I never have gotten jealous, but I sit back and go, well, maybe I should be a little jealous. Maybe the envy should rekindle something that I had when I first started. Because when I first started, Nick, I didn't want to be a fan. I never wanted to be an actor, and I know a lot of failed actors. It's easy to say that I never wanted to be an actor, but I moved away from L.A. when I was represented by Gersh and by the William Morris Agency. It just didn't appeal to me. I wanted to work on the road. I wanted to be a comedian, and comics will understand that. I guess the society of the business will nudge you, well, not even nudge you, will shove you in that direction because they think that's the natural progress. Mm-hmm. But I think there are dudes, man, that just want to be comics. And as the years have gone on, putting kids through college and paying mortgages and car notes and stuff, and just living a typical mainstream life was enough for me until just recently. And when I saw that those specials, and I sat back and watched, I saw the consistency of guys that I would see back in the day, like Dennis Wolfberg and Paula Poundstone, and even the infamous Vince Champ. I would want to be those guys, and I just wondered where that went. I mean, sure, money is great. I mean, nobody's gonna have I'm not gonna be doing any GoFundMe's for to pay bills for me anytime soon. Thank God, unless they get hurt or whatever. But I want to compete again. I want to go up for. I want to send out a tape. I want to feel like that anxious feeling that I once felt when I would send out stuff to Comedy Centrals when the half hour special selections rolled around. I want to feel that same anticipation when I put a call in to people at the Montreal Comedy Festival, the Bruce Hills of the world, and to do that again. So that's all. I mean, it's nothing. And hopefully, when I wrote the post, I was hoping nobody thought that I looked at people on TV and I was like, wow, if they can do it, I'm better. No, it's not that. It's just that they motivated me to want to be better.
Well, part of what caught my attention about that post is I think people maybe think of stand-up as a make-or-break proposition, that the goal is fame and fortune, and if you don't get that, you've failed, but there's a finer gradation to it, that this can be your job. You can support your family doing it, and short of being Chris Rock or Amy Schumer or Louis C.K., that there's a middle class in this industry that people don't necessarily think about, and that might have been where you were.
Right, absolutely. And I think even more profoundly, Nick, I think people sort of choose to ignore that middle class. I think they know it exists.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this is as interesting to talk about. I think it's more interesting to talk about the starving comedian. I think that narrative is more stimulating.
Uh-huh.
I think it's more interesting to talk about the famous comedian because that narrative has greater human interest. But when it comes to guys that are, making, anywhere between, I don't know, $70,000 and $100,000 a year, doing clubs or colleges or cruise ships, the angle just isn't that sexy. But from what I've seen and within my personal experience, like some of those guys are some of the best hidden or diamonds in the rough. They're like 30-year diamond in the roughs that I've ever seen. I mean, on any given night, like on a cruise ship or whatever, I can meet a comic that I've never met before in my entire life, and he can impress me he or she can impress me to no end. And I can name a list of 10 comedians that you've never heard of that have been just making money over the last 20 years, and they'll knock your socks off.
Mm-hmm.
And any of them could make the decision that I made and could get out there or get back out there, and I think that it'd be worth their while.
Well, I met a bunch of them when I was starting off. I started off writing for the Buffalo News in the late 90s, and I would interview people that come through the Funny Bone there. And there were a lot of comedians that were sort of living out of their cars on the road and going from club to club and making a living, and they weren't necessarily swinging for the stars anymore, but they loved what they were doing. They were good at it in a lot of cases, and they had a lot of just great stories about traveling around the country and that one big shot that they did have. And, it seemed like that was a vast sort of untapped, there's a lot of stories there that people just never heard.
Right. I even think that, when people ask me about, and I'm only an authority on my story. I can't be an authority on anybody else's, but from what I know and from what I've seen, and again, I can only speak for me and the people that, and my friends and guys who have, who I share similar experiences with. Sorry, I just killed a wasp. There's a lot of serendipity that has to take place in order for you to, get that brass ring. And then, sometimes when it comes to, there are a lot of guys that were famous that even blew up back in the day. Like I've been stand-up since 1989 is when I first started doing open mics. I went full-time in 1994. Mm-hmm. And between now and then, oh my God, probably 90% of the guys who were doing it or whatever aren't doing it anymore. There are a lot of guys who are famous. I was talking about a comedian the other day who was blazing hot, who I did the Bay Area comedy competition with back in the day, who was incredible talent, who people loved, who had TV shows and whatever, and not even in the business anymore. He went to the military and did some other stuff, and good for him, because being happy is what is what we all strive to do anyway. Mm-hmm. But there are no guarantees. And even when you talk about the shot that you missed, I can sit there and tell you stories all day about, the one gig that would have gone right. If it would have gone right, then, I'd be a household name. But, you'll never know because the gig didn't go right. I mean, I was in the Comedy Store but the Laugh Factory one night, I played piano, had this thing, there was a guitar strapped around my shoulder. In the middle of my set, the lights went off. Big deal. Big industry showcase. Bunch of people on there. Carlos Mencia, Mary Ellen Hooper, a And the light just went off in the middle of my set. I pulled out my piano to play a song that I just written that I thought was like really cool. And my strap broke and it fell on the piano and broke in two pieces.
Oh, man.
And you can't like you can't get back into a great headspace, Nick, when you see like when the lights go out and you're struggling. I mean, I'd never sweat. I mean, it's typical for me to sweat when the lights are on, but I'd never sweat so profusely with lights off.
Right.
And after when the keyboard broke, I mean, you know, the range of emotion between the set being over and this $1,100 piece of equipment that I could barely afford at the time, it was broken in pieces right in front of me. And for me to finish on a stock joke that the only reason I remembered it was because I remember commenting 2 days earlier how bad it was. But so anyway, long story short, could that gig have changed my life if I would have ripped it apart? I don't know, maybe, but I didn't. So you know, the retrospect is incomplete. I mean, you know, there's no way to know what would have happened after that.
Right, it's chaos theory. Which way would the drop have rolled on the top of your hand if if things had been slightly different?
If the lights would have stayed on and I would have bought a new keyboard strap. Who knows?
Right. And afterwards they came up and asked you, we loved your gig, but how do you break the keyboard in half every night?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, in the middle, as the MC was on stage, the lights came back on and people applauded. And I felt like that was my applause. It was so disconcerting because as I left sheepishly, tail tucked between my legs, I had that feeling. I mean, every guy knows it. From the bonehead set on an open mic night to like the biggest showcase set of your career, and then afterwards, you know, the next round of applause you hear is because the lights came on, and if that was a 10, what the adulation that you received when you got off stage was a 2. You kind of want to, you know, it makes you almost want to go home where you're safe and where you're comfortable, and you know, so. But I mean, I have stories like that. And I'm pretty sure a lot of guys have stories like that. But again, you know, the only way to exercise those demons is to, you know, get back out there again. And I don't mean like, you know, just pitter patter. I mean, I'm making a concerted effort to, you know, with new headshots, and I'm shooting videos, trying to figure out an angle for some sort of web blog, and something, you know, contacting friends of mine and figuring out who books what and shooting out links from stuff that I do now on stage that I think is current and cool and relevant. I mean, you know, I have fans that range all ages, and I think I can get it done. And the only way I can, like if I just sit here and tell you about it, sit here and talk about it and not do anything about it, I just sound like an old dude with delusions of grandeur. So I wouldn't even have this conversation with you if I wasn't serious about some sort of push. So if it works, it'd be great. I'd love to have this conversation again. Right. Well, if it doesn't, you know.
And just to be clear, you've not stopped working. When you say that you're ready to compete again, you've been working solidly. You've been doing the cruise ships.
I've been working solidly for the last 20 years. Yes. Of course. I mean, compete on that level. Compete for TV spots. You know, compete for interviews when CNN wants to speak to a 25-year veteran of stand-up comedian. You know, I mean, because I think that the road is, when people talk about comedy, I think the best stories are, I don't know, dude, I just think that the Hollywood stories are regurgitated. The stories that we know, you know, those stories are those stories, but some of the best stories are the road stories. I mean, you know, there have been comedians that have been like murdered, and there are notorious rooms on the road where you get paid and the owner has a gun on the desk, and you know, they're just stories, man. I mean, they run rampant, and there are hundreds of like really cool narratives that are attached to what happens in Middle America. But it seems like when people want to tell the story about stand-up comedy, they want to talk to the quote-unquote famous people about the famous people, and there's stories that we already know. But there's these hidden gems in Omaha, Nebraska, and Des Moines, Iowa, and Columbia, Columbia, Missouri, that deal with stories that nobody ever really talks about.
Well, you're talking about those stories you're talking about are history, and I think people are maybe more interested in legend, and there's a distinction.
Right. Well, but how long? I mean, but how many times can you talk about the legend over and over again? And I get it, and I totally get
Right.
it. I mean, I absolutely get it. But there are just other stories that, and so I guess the point I was making in that point was, I'm tired of waiting for that reporter or that story to come around for them to need a contributor, because that's the one I was waiting on. Instead I'm gonna put myself out there again and kind of let people know the stuff that I've done. I mean, I have a very impressive resume. I've probably done more in any 5-year period of my career than most comics have done, in their entirety, unless they're famous.
Well, you've done the TV shows. You've
under
done.
the radar, every year I'd get something, a festival or a TV spot or a something. But it began. The Hollywood just L.A. and back and forth, and I mean, the back and forth. It became a little bit more trouble than it's worth.
Are you going to start doing that now? Going to New York and Los Angeles from Houston?
I most definitely am. And I go in as humble as I don't go in with any expectations. I just want to go and make it fun, because when I went before, I couldn't afford it, and not that I'm like balling, but it's like now I can afford it. I don't have to sleep on a friend's sofa. I can kind of afford a hotel for a couple of days. It's not going to be a great hotel. It'll be something, but I can afford to, I can eat for as long as I'm there, whenever I decide to be, because then before I couldn't do that. Like, my kids are older now, so I'm not worried about taking money from a budget, like dipping into a fund that could have sent them to private school in order for me to fulfill my dream. That's not a concern anymore, because I did everything that I wanted to do with them. One just got her master's at NYU last year, and my son is graduating from the University of Texas this year, and he's moving to LA because he wants to be an actor. So,
Well, congratulations. Congratulations on that. Maybe you guys can room together sometimes when you go out there.
Yeah.
Go out for.
Man, he's excited. Oh, as soon as I posted that, he called me. Said, "Hey, Dad, what's going on?" I just explained to him what I explained to you, but he'd always been, they've always been supportive. So, no complaints. But, I don't know. I mean, hopefully someday I can be an example. Somebody, that, not really that thought it was over, but I just meet so many despondent comedians that don't care anymore. And I was that dude up until I got motivated, I guess a week or so ago. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, can you do more from Houston now than you could? I mean, there's social media, there's all sorts of ways of sort of building a career in place that weren't around 25 years ago.
Yeah, you can, but it's just like finding that thing, Nick. It's like anybody else. Like, it's like with younger, like if you're in your 20s, your conversation is going to be more wide-ranging on social networks, because you're firmly entrenched into what's popular. You know what I mean? So everything that you talk about, well, not everything that you talk about, but you know what's funny, you know what's good. I mean, you know what's, but the older you get, the less interested you get into what's socially popular, and the more interested you get into what's politically popular. And I don't know if I could merge something so I can do something political that's going to be popular, just because. But yeah, I can do something. Some sort of YouTube. I have an idea for a short film. I'm a pretty decent writer, so I'm just excited about this podcast for one. I mean, like, I do podcasts, and I enjoy them, but I don't typically go out of my way to do them. But now of the guys that have asked me, I've just gone through my mailbox, and a few people have asked me to be on theirs. I'm excited about doing them because I don't know. I just feel like a resurgence. I feel like Apollo when he got into the ring and said he felt like he was born again. Now ignore the fact that he died shortly after that. But at least
we'll just take that part of the history out of there.
But at least he was there, man. It's like when I look at these shows like Survivor, bro, and Big Brother. I've always, been a guy that rooted for the underdog. I mean, I'm a Houston sports fan.
Right.
You live in Boston. You wouldn't know anything about my journey or this life, so don't even pretend. But innately, if you're from like this area, you root for the underdog. But like for me, like when I see older dudes do well, it's motivating. There's this guy on Big Brother right now. Older dude, his name is Kevin. He's hilarious. He's a funny dude, man. He's fitting right in with these kids and they're keeping him on, whatever. And he sings whatever. Not just but I think that even if I were their age, even if when I was young and I would see fish out of water, I'd always pull for fish out of water. I'd always pull for the older dude in the situation. I still pull for the black person on Wheel of Fortune just because that's what we do. But
right.
But now I'm that fish out of water in an industry that's probably the median age of success is 20 years behind me. But that still doesn't mean that I can't do it.
Right. Well, what do you mind me asking?
Commercial success.
Do you mind me asking what your age is?
52.
You've mentioned before when we were talking on Facebook about this that your point of view might make you unique and might make you stand out. That you have some things to say. I mean, you not only have the industry experience, but you've also been a playwright, which I didn't realize that until I started researching for this. Also, you had a 5-year stint as a Houston police officer. There's a lot that you might be able to say past an entertainment industry perspective.
Well, early in my career, I did the police officer thing to death. I mean, me and a guy by the name of David Raybon, and another guy, I guess, by the name of John. It was DeCrosta, possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, we were the only comics that were ex-cops back in the day, and everybody, my agents, Billy, you talk about it. I was going to audition for remember Reno 9/11?
Yeah.
Like the first with the one with Niecy Nash. My management turned that show down because Comedy Central, they weren't giving it to me, but I was going to bypass the casting and go straight to producers just because I was a cop and whatever.
Uh-huh.
They didn't think that my acting chops were up to snuff. And I was so happy because, dude, if I still wanted to carry the stigma or be identified as a cop, it would stand to reason that I was still like, I'd still like be in the job. I mean, at the time that job paid more money. It was far more stable. I kind of wanted to get away from the police angle, but people strap me with that. But when I talk about, my angle, it's like I feel like when I do go to comedy festivals, I've done a few the last couple of years, Moon Tower most notably, and when I do open mic nights, I love open mics. I love just hanging out with the alt guys and watching what they do. Not in terms of content, but just watch how the styles vary.
Right.
And you just want to compete on that level. I mean, they have no idea. I sit in the back of the room, and I go up on regular. People that know me, they know that I'm not an ego dude. They know that I'm not getting on stage to, just to feed my ego. That I'm really getting up there to try and compete, to try and, I want to be better than them, and not based on who I am. I don't want to overpower them with my theory on how comedy should go and tell them what they're doing is wrong and what I'm doing is right. And if I fail, somehow pull them to the side and go, well, you may have had a better set than I did, but, I'm doing it better. It's stupid.
Right.
So to be able to compete on that level and to be able to make the same people laugh that they make laugh is crucially important, I think, in any type of resurgence or any type of, I guess, when you try and get back into the mainstream of anything that's popular or anything that's socially relevant. So that's how I do it. I mean, I have a sort of a surreal approach to some of my twists and turns. I think I have a broad enough reference base to be able to add something abstract to something reasonable. Some of the pieces that I'm working on, I can get away with N-word jokes, a little more of N-word pieces, just because I'm older, I'm African American, and I come from an angle that people don't normally explore. I have a piece about
It's no, it's not live. It's a podcast,
Okay, well, feel free to
pre-taped.
delete if you like, but for example, one of my pieces now is, one of the pieces I'm working on, it's one of my favorite pieces, and I keep adding and taking, but here's the core of it. I just don't think that, and I say it to you not to try a joke on you, because I think it's an important social statement. Like, I don't know why African Americans are so upset with Donald Trump, because basically Donald Trump is a nigger. I don't understand why white people are so upset with niggers, because I think niggers are Donald Trump. And then I go down the line. Donald Trump has 5 kids and 3 baby mamas. That's basically what niggas do. Now, just because I use the N-word there doesn't mean that my approach is that super urban, because it isn't. But I just think that makes that joke even more important, because it comes out of nowhere. Out of this mainstream set, I try and integrate something that's it's a little bit abstract, and it's something that kind of makes sense, and it's something that ends up being really funny. Now, right now, my last line is, Donald Trump got a great job, and then he hired all of his unqualified friends. It's basically what niggas do. So, that joke, everybody loves and hates at the same time. And it's sort of the stuff, that or what I'm going for now. Is it the right approach? Who knows, Nick? I know I'm having fun doing it. Because I know that I have there's a goal in mind now. There's a light, there's a brighter light at the end of an already well-lit tunnel. So, I'm playing with house money. So it's not like, it's do or die like it was back in the day. It's not like, when I go to LA in 1995, what is this, 2017? When I go to LA in, 1994, I'd have to come back with something, or else I don't eat.
Right. Well,
now it's like, I go to LA now, I go and I bring the food with me. That sounds stupid, but I think, you understand what I mean.
Well, I want to go back to the Donald Trump joke for a second.
Sure.
When you do that, it seems like things are so tumultuous now, and there's so much news every day that Trump makes or makes up. I mean, do you have to check the paper that morning to see how that joke might go over in the context of what he might have said or tweeted that day?
Oh no, not at all, because what veterans do. I don't always say what veterans do. I mean, if you have veterans or you have good instincts, or if people like you, you'll realize that the thing that makes stand-up successful in a live setting is being able to create your own environment. I mean, I couldn't do that joke if I was trying to do that joke in somebody else's environment. Then it's whatever. I wouldn't open up with that joke. Like if I had a 3-minute set, it probably wouldn't be one of the jokes that I feel like doing. But that piece is woven into a at least a 15-minute set.
Right.
It's almost a closure. It's towards the end of the set on my hour sets and whatever. And before that time, I have my opinions on politics and on government and on Trump from a very centrist point of view, because I try not to alienate anybody. It's not my desire. I mean, I'm not that guy. I mean, I don't get off on pissing people off. But if they get upset with me, I'm offended, because I try and come from a very mainstream vantage point, in that if they're patient enough with me, they'll know that I have a bunch to say about both sides, and I establish up front that I'm not going to hate anybody for who they voted for. However, ...
Well, your style's not easily defined. There's some social and political stuff. There's some more gentle observational stuff. There's some musical stuff that sort of mixes all that together. I mean, is that by design to sort of keep from getting pigeonholed? Is that just sort of how things naturally developed?
That's just how it naturally developed, and I wish that, and I kind of hate, not really hate, but it'd be easier if I were more easily defined, because I think I'm good at all those approaches. Like, I played piano forever. I think So I guess it's pretty good. But I wish that, I were just kind of known for the one thing. I wish that, if I could put I don't know, how do I, if everything that I do is a 7, I'd wish that, I could add all the 7s and make just one of the things a 21. Like if I was if I could be a 20 political comic, like if I could be Christopher Titus and not play the piano anymore, then I would do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or if I could be Victor Borga and not talk about politics anymore, then I would do that. Or if I could be Stephen Wright and not do the other two, then I would do that. But I guess it is what it is. Maybe I need to mature. Is that what you're telling me, Nick? What you're saying?
No, well,
Was that the low key? Let me drop something on Billy so he can I can think about it and have this manifest into something that's gonna help him out in his in his little skits.
I'm not even taping this. This is just an intervention. That's the whole point of it. In fact, I don't even exist. I'm your Christian Slater from Mr. Robot.
Oh, very nice. Yes, I like it.
Yes, but that whole idea of being pigeonholed, how it's why all the package tours came up. It's a tremendous promotional tour, but then you're stuck with that. You're that guy after that.
Yeah, but if it hits, like with the Kings of Comedy and obviously Blue Collar, if it hits, man, it's gone. And I also think that that packaging thing works because, clubs want something they can market. Like, you want something they can market. They want a whole show they can market.
Right.
Like a friend of mine, I don't know if you know Ali Sadiq.
No.
Ali's from Houston. And Ali, and he's a big deal on Comedy Central. He's shooting his second Comedy Central special. He's a great friend of mine. He did something several years ago. And what he would do is when he would go in and headline a club, he wouldn't put Ali Sadiq wouldn't be the headline. The name of the show would be the headline. Whatever it was, I don't remember. My air conditioner is cold. Whatever the title was, that would be the people come out and see. This is the title of the show, and whatever it was, that's how he sort of built his fan base on the road. And each time he'd go in, he'd have a different show with a different theme. And when I say different show, I mean it. He's a brilliant writer. I think he's a generational talent. And if you could ever get him on the podcast, I would totally recommend it, man, because he's a very interesting character. And I'll do your research and I'll let him tell you his story. It's very compelling. But the point was, people like themes. They like something they can hold on to. They go, oh, well, I don't know if I can relate to Billy D. Washington, but I have an air conditioner. See what he's talking about. Maybe he's going to tell me something about my air conditioner something funny about my air conditioner I hadn't thought about before.
I think you've finally found something that somebody hasn't packaged yet. If you can find
it's never too late, man.
3 other people.
Yeah, I got some spots available in March. What are you doing? You want to?
if you could find a couple other people who have some air conditioning stories, just the lightest of common.
Put it out there, dude. Pass it by some agents. See what's up. Give a carrier, train some carriers. We wear a cute hat and the name tag. I think it'd be amazing.
Now, you're a very good piano player and a singer. Did you ever think you'd wind up doing music instead of comedy?
Well, I'm not a great singer. I sing what I can play. Like I can, but if somebody else was playing, I couldn't do it. And that stressed me out. And like karaoke is, the only way I'm effective in karaoke is I have like 4 songs that I've parodied, and I go in and crush it because I made parodies out of these songs that people like. But when I was a kid, my first comedy influence, literally, Nick, was Victor Borga. I wanted to be that dude. I wanted to be that guy that came in and played these antics with the piano. And I grew up playing classical music. I took piano lessons from the time I was 8 until I was 19. I know how to read music. And when I first saw it, I didn't necessarily want to be Eddie Murphy until I saw Eddie Murphy. And I was like, holy crap, this is what I want to do now. Mm-hmm. Like, I think those influences, I think that, in people's formative years in comedy, they make such a big difference. Like, I think if there was a contemporary, like if there was a guys like James Stevens III, who played the piano, but I just didn't know what it looked like from a contemporary vantage point. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, could you do it now?
I could, but it would kind of it'd be starting over, man. And it's like aesthetically, when you come in with the piano, like when I taped my last TV show, it was I almost got into a fight about my damn piano. This dude wanted to fight me because the piano was on stage. I mean, okay, well, so I had the piano. They set the piano up. I'm backstage with the other comedians. Somebody says, whose piano is that? Before I can answer, another comedian says, I don't know, but if it's on stage when I get there, it's going to get broke. So I in turn say to him, it's my piano, and nobody's breaking my piano. But I mean, it's my piano, and you ain't breaking shit, exactly what I said. So there was a back and forth. He said, well, you better get it off the stage. Well, I don't have any control of it being on stage. Back and forth between me and this comedian. Production dude comes up. Well, it wasn't production dude. This guy's EP now. He says, don't worry. As soon as Billy's done, we'll take the piano down. We'll strike the piano. Obviously, you're going to strike the piano, but don't get aggressive towards my piano.
Right. Don't literally strike the piano.
Like, my piano, when my wife isn't around, my piano is my boo. I mean, not that I do anything indecent with the piano, but you know what I'm saying? It's
well,
like,
that's another act.
do not threaten violence against my piano because there will be a problem. So yeah, aesthetically, it's just hard to. I would love to like do a late night show with just my piano, with just like songs that are written, but the neophyte to what that is only knows Reggie Watts and only knows Zach Galifianakis and only knows Craig Robinson and what that looks like. And Craig Robinson's piano got popular, like, based on stuff that he did on lesser stuff. And then people said, okay, we're going to put it on because we saw, the piano on BET, we saw the piano on Def Jam and whatever. And I don't know, plus he had nights in LA and whatever, but to come in cold and go, I got a piano, I got songs I want to do, I don't know, man, it's tough. Or maybe I'm talking myself out of it. I don't know, or maybe I'm just a huge fan of the stand-up right now and I want to, but well, I mean, it does feel like therapy now.
Sorry about that. It occurs to me, though, you could do it the way that Ollie does it, and that could just be one show.
I tried that. I actually toured that show. I did theaters, man. I did this musical show about race, and I played this thing. It was great, man. I did, in the Carolinas, did like 8 theaters through this thing called the. It's sort of NACA, but for adults. I can't think of the name of it now. It's some sort of arts consortium deal where you go in and showcase, and they like this show that I put up. It was cool, but it didn't really catch on. I taped it and I sent it out or whatever, and and basically they were older white people in the audience. So, and I don't have no idea why older white people don't get the commercial credit that they should. But apparently, if you do well in front of older white people, it means nothing. But if you can do well in front of a full auditorium of older white people, and it means nothing, Nick. But you can do well in front of 16 millennials, at a titty bar in Flint, Michigan, and oh my God, you're.
Well, because they're all live Facebooking it, so you have a bigger audience than you think you do.
Yeah, or something. I don't know, bro. I mean, I don't want to sound like an old man here, but I just don't. Yeah.
When was that?
That's your question.
When was that show?
That was like 2012.
And are you looking to do a special now? Is that part of the overall goal?
The immediate goal is late night TV spots. I'm working on a banging 6-minute set. And then working on it. I'm cultivating it. I am reworking it. It's already there. And once I get to, you have to tape it over and over again to make sure that, like, tape it in different places to see. It's like it's not New York. Like I wish New York comics are the best. And New York is the best place to do it because, well, I guess, places that are fertile like Boston because, you have those audiences on any given night that you can do a 6-minute deal but it's hard here to find that backdrop,
Yeah.
and to find that audience that's going to be it's going to touch and agree to a point that's going to make your tape look like it's, because people say, well, I can see through the audience. It doesn't make any difference. But that's a lie. Like if they think that the laughter comes off staged, then they'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working the set, taking around my camera. I'm doing it everywhere, and when I feel like the serendipity is there, then that's going to be the tape that I start to send out. So to answer your question, short term, I'm wanting to do a late night spot. Long term, I mean, a special will be cool, but I'm not one of these dudes that wants to go out and pay $30,000 just so
to produce it yourself.
Get back 12, so somebody can buy it for 12.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like there's been a proliferation of the specials, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing. It seems like any other advancement that's happened in the past couple of decades, it increases opportunity, and it also increases the noise you have to break through.
Exactly, Nick. And I mean, I don't think it'd be any surprise. I don't think that anybody in this business would think that I was snooty if I said that I looked at some hour-long specials on Netflix and some stuff that I'd seen on Showtime that I wouldn't. My feelings aren't hurt that I'm not associated with that.
Mm-hmm. Now, are the people that you're sending tapes to, and they're the sort of gatekeepers, are they the same people that you've sent to before? Has that all sort of changed over?
Some of it has. That's a great question. Yeah, man. Some of it has changed over. Some of it is different now. But there are a few guys that I still know from back in the day who I've done drinks with at the Aspen Comedy Festival. Oh my God, Aspen was amazing. I've done Montreal 3 times, and some of those dudes that I've been in those nice, cushy meetings when they were PAs. I tell you what, man, I made my most impressive contacts when comedy executives would actually go out on the road and recruit comics for festivals. Like, oh man, like years ago, I don't know if it's safe to say the person's name. I will, because I think he's a great dude, and I'm going to reach out to him eventually. I met JP Buck when JP was scouting for the Montreal Comedy Festival. Mm-hmm. He was basically a scout for Montreal. He came through Houston, and they had an audition for Houston. Mm-hmm. I was the MC. Met him, picked him up from the airport. We hung out. I saw him a few times. He was always really cool. I haven't reached out to him again, but I don't know. I don't even know if he remembers me. But that's a relationship that I made. There's another Comedy Central executive. He used to work for HBO, and I hooked him up with a girl. They broke up shortly afterwards. But he was coming through Houston, on an HBO talent thing, and I hosted that thing. Picked him up, same deal. Picked him up, took him out. We hung out. He met this girl who was a friend of mine. I hooked him up with her. They dated for a while. They broke up. Now, he has a family. He's, super cool dude. I won't call his name just because, he's, I don't know. Maybe he's out. Anyway, but that's another person I want to reach out to. But everybody else, no, it's fun. I don't know, and it's kind of fun finding out who these people are. I mean, I can write a hell of an email, too. I don't know what angle I'm coming from. I don't know if I'll come from a, like when I want to start to build this story, this comeback story. I mean, I've never had a debilitating disease, but wow,
we can work on that.
Yeah, I mean, or make one up, apparently. But I guess the perspective is going to be just basically what has drawn you to this interview, or to this conversation.
Well,
I mean, if I had it at one time, I mean, people have said nice stuff about what I do on stage, and I mean, if my instincts were correct back then, I would like to think that 20 more years of experience would only refine those instincts, even more. Mm-hmm. Because I competed back then. I got when I was written up in national publications, on shows with other people. I
Well,
and some of these people are household names now. So I'm just saying that I'm not writing, grandkids material. I barely mention my family, how my wife hates me, or, our kids are stupid and get off my lawn material. No, dude. And plus, I'm not doing shuck and jive, dance across the stage. The ladies look good in the building. Stuff either. I'm not quoting hip hop lyrics. I'm not. But I'm still not. But I still don't come out to music. I still don't dance to music before I begin my dialogue. It's somewhere in the middle of all that.
Right. Well, I will say that what attracted me to this interview is that I've always found you funny. I've always liked your stuff, and to see you say I'm competing again was I never thought that you left by any means.
Oh no, I never stopped working. But see, you're entrenched. I mean, you're in Boston. You're in the middle of it, so everything feels so perpetual to you. Mm-hmm. But when you live in Houston and you can feel removed from stuff, and plus when you live in Houston and you go to stuff like comedy conferences and you see the experts who come in, God bless them for what they know and the information that they have. But when you sit back and watch an expert and you know that you are more of an expert than the expert, then you go, it's time to, and you know that this person is actually making moves and doing stuff, and there's a lot of meat on the bone that I'm not really taking advantage of, and that's all that was. It wasn't so much that I was now I'm a candle maker. I want to get back, and I want to pick up some feature dates and try and go on tour with
Well, that happens though. I've seen it in music. One of my favorite songwriters is Kenny Roby from Six String Drag, and I found out he was doing massage for years.
Right.
And then he came back with some great stuff recently. Mm-hmm. I was happy to see it. I've seen, and people don't realize that there are day jobs involved. Even if once you know somebody's name, I think as a fan you think, oh well, that's what they do. They've made it. So when I see somebody, another songwriter I love by the name of Beaver Nelson, he's in Texas, not terribly far from where you are. When you see him making a video of a song he's writing in a house he's painting, right? That sort of hits you. That there are all these people who it would be so easy probably to just give up that other thing, that artistic pursuit, that creative pursuit, that you work, where the work is so hard to get, to get any sort of audience at all. The temptation has to be there to just say, well, there's got to be another job that can get me somewhere.
Exactly. And you know what? I was almost at that place. I was like in 2008, 2009,
mm-hmm.
when the writing became the writing was on the wall. I mean, I'm not a Midwest guy, so there's a plethora of places to work in the Midwest. I mean, and you can make a living as a feature, just like going out every week, but then coming home.
Mm-hmm.
But being in Houston, in Texas, there's not a lot of stuff there's not a lot of club headliner work, and that's where the bulk of the bill paying was coming from. And so I started to explore other revenue generating avenues just because it wasn't popping. And then we started I did a couple of things. I did this thing called the Sellout Comedy Tour, which I know you're familiar with. I did I started touring with kids from Kid and Play.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that, me being sort of this celebrity, if celebrities wanted to go out on the road, because that was a big deal, and I think that a lot of celebrities failed on the road because they didn't have a consistent person that wanted to go out with them, and they didn't have the relationship with them to be able to tell them that what they were doing on stage sucked.
Mm.
But then they'd go out in front of their fans. Another one, when Kid and I worked together, we had such a great relationship, and I'd tell him dude, you be the draw. I can do most of the material. You just try different stuff every night, and then we'll write. And now he's an amazing comic now. But that was a model that I wanted to use. I mean, basically to make money. Mm-hmm. But like I said, man, when the cruise ships came around, I guess full circle. They came around. I was recruited, like, because I can play both sides. I can work clean. I started clean. I can work adult. I love adult just because, not because I like cursing, but it's just I can use all the verbal tools that are available. Like, if the vernacular will afford it, then I'm going to use what's available to me. And I'm musical, so it was sort of a natural thing. And when that came along, then came the complacency. Then all the other stuff that I had going, the celebrities that I wanted to approach, the theater things that I wanted to do, some of the other stuff just seemed like I was spinning my wheels. And I was like, why am I doing all that to pay bills when this one job can pretty much pay all my bills and I can just work the clubs that I want to work? So.
Well, what's left as far as clubs in Houston? There used to be a couple of A rooms there. The Improv moved in there, and there was Laugh Stop, and there were a couple of other rooms, right?
Right. Well, okay. There was a Laugh Spot.
Laugh Spot.
There was a Laugh Spot. There was a Laugh Stop. There was Spellbinders. There was the Comedy Showcase.
That was the Comedy and Magic room there somewhere, right?
Right. Yeah, Comedy Magic Room, but it was what was it called? But it was hypnotists and stuff. It wasn't really comedians. It was basically hypnotists and magicians. But since then, now we're down to the Improv, which is basically the mainstream headliners there are, the black mainstream headliners are Ali Sadiq, who is very deservedly so, because like I said, he's a genius. But other than famous. Other than the kids that are on TV shows, that you don't get people like guys have been killing it on these improv rosters. You don't get guys like Kevin Bozeman and Vince Morris and BT and Hal Grooms and myself and Tim Northern and these mainstream black acts that have been just been killing it for years. There's just no place for us anymore because if. And again, in a very non-racist way, I get the business of it. I think it's segregationalist, but I don't think the intent has hate behind it. I just think that the improvs. I think that they've just gentrified the African American experience, and they're monetizing it. And hey, man, I get it. Because if I can figure out a way to make money on the experience of white people, I'm gonna do it. And I think that if an Asian guy can figure out a way to appeal to Indonesia, well, not Indonesia, bad, to appeal to Europeans in a way that's that works for them, they're gonna do it. It's just that I'm a victim in this particular thing. I mean, we're like the Macy's. We're like the brick and mortar in a sort of an Amazon generation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, so is there a big picture goal, an ultimate goal of what you want to do, or is that sort of counterproductive at this point? You just take it sort of stage by stage.
I mean, the end goal is to is to be relevant again. Is to be, when CNN when somebody else wants to do another history of comedy. I would love for a producer. I mean, dude, honestly, Nick, right here, you being relevant, me like, following you on Twitter and watching what you do and your conversations with people that are far more popular than me, dude, this is part of the end goal. I mean, today is a huge milestone in whatever this quote unquote comeback is.
You know what?
I mean, stuff like this makes me smile. And I'm not, it's not even, if I can make money doing a special, that's great. Or if somebody wants to hire me, if the improvs come back and go, well, now that you've done a couple of TV spots and we want to pay you and the money is competitive with that of what you do on ships, then yeah. But that's going to be a hard sell just because I don't want to alienate my my bread and butter now for an entity who's let me down before, but I don't take it personally. I know it's business.
Well, let me say it's flattering for you to say that this is part of the end goal, but I also know how much I watch my numbers every day, and I'm trying to push for this to be something of more than it is now. So it's interesting sometimes when I hear somebody say that they're fighting to get something out there, and I'm sort of thinking in the back of my mind, well, I'm sort of doing the same thing with this podcast, trying to get it out
hand,
there.
Brother. That's it, man. Hand in hand, So there was another point that I wanted to make about I don't remember what it was. The other point was I don't know.
About getting back into it.
I think I wanted to dispel any critiques of cruise ship comedians, but I think I did that already.
Yes.
But there was something else, and I don't remember what it was. And it was a great point that I was going to make, and I don't remember what it was. Anyway.
Oh, did I interrupt you just now? You were getting to it when you were talking about sort of networking again and CNN calling, and was that it?
No, it was when I was making a point about African Americans and mainstream and
gentrifying the experience.
Exactly, and gentrifying the experience. There was another point that I wanted to make. Oh, I know what it was. And again, I never want to be, bro. Hey, I put all the responsibility on my shoulder for not being that. Oh, and there's one more. For not being that comedian who could have transitioned, who could have made urban commercial, who could have been Ari Spears, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Who could have been Bruce and Lavelle Crawford, and I had every opportunity to do it. But I just, for whatever reason, my writing style just doesn't fit in that arena. And I love it. Mike Epps is probably my favorite comedian right now. I mean, his special is between Mike Epps' last special and Dave Chappelle's 3 specials. Those are my 3 favorite specials of the last probably 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could be more Mike Epps than Billy D. Washington. So I wanted to make that point clear because I didn't want anybody to think that I was shitting on quote-unquote urban comedians, because I would never do that. Because if it wasn't for Def Jam, dude, I'd probably be, framing pictures or something now, whittling.
That's it. I can't tell you how many.
I'd have a snow cone truck somewhere.
You can't tell you how many amazing comedians I've
because
seen.
I was able to take advantage of it. It's not their fault. I just wish that there were more tolerance. I just wish there was more of a concerted effort on the behalf of, comedy club people to, recognize the fact that there are people out there, African American comedians, like, and like Aaron Jackson and like Tracy Ashley, who, may not, fit that urban bill, but who have some important stuff to say, man, that fits right into, that understands what it is to be on both sides of the fence. And I can only speak for me when I say, having worked as a cop and having worked, having grew up in the ghetto and having, who have been a hip-hop fan and have grown up playing classical music and who's most prolific at jazz and gospel. And, I have a lot of stuff to say. And I just think that there's a place for that in some storytelling space on Comedy Central. I think there's a place for that in some 6-minute piece on Conan. I think that there's something that I do that Fallon and Corden and Colbert could fit into their particular format.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's just up to me to figure out what that is and proceed.
Okay, and where can people look to find your stuff?
Nowhere. I'm Googleable. I mean, it's like I have a YouTube channel, Billy D. Washington, but everything is Billy D. Washington. My Facebook stuff, some of my more political stuff is on there. My Twitter is pretty active. Everything is Billy D. Washington. Instagram, the whole deal. I have to do better just in terms of my sets and stuff, that to have a space where I had a website for years and it did nothing for me.
Uh-huh.
But I think I'm going to go back to try the website strategy again. But it's a part of the resurgence. But I'm pretty Googleable. I'm the second most popular Billy D on Google. until NBA playoff time, which is interesting. Okay, so Billy D. Williams is obviously the most popular. But for most of the year, Billy D. Washington, you type Billy D. and Billy Washington comes up. But then during playoff time, especially when the Oklahoma City Thunder, when they're in the playoffs, Billy Donovan is the second most popular. But even when the Oklahoma City Thunder are in the playoffs, they still cannot supersede the popularity of one Billy D. Williams. So,
right.
That's a consolation prize that I'm happy with.
Can you put that on your show posters? The second most popular Billy D.
No, it's tattooed on my neck, but I haven't quite committed to putting it on a show poster yet.
Well, yeah. You don't want to make any rash decisions.
No. I don't want to do anything that I can't, that's going to haunt me later on.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time to speak with me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Nick. I really appreciate you too, man.
Okay, thanks.
Arrow to the head isn't always a trend.
Thanks again to Billy D. Washington for speaking with me on short notice for this podcast. You can, as he said, Google him and keep an eye out for him in the near future. We spoke a little bit after this, and he may have something for you for football season. Can't say yet. Maybe you didn't hear it from me, but keep your eyes out. And to play us out, we have Get Away, the lead single from Everything All at Once, the debut album from Brooklyn band Birds. That's plural with no the, so as not to be confused with the Birds of Turn, Turn, Turn fame. I liked this one immediately. It's fuzzy, ebullient guitar pop, maybe something inspiring to start your day with. It reminds me of some of the stuff I used to play on my college radio show, say 2, 3, 20 or so years ago. The new album is out this Friday, August 18th from Greenway Records. This is Birds with Get Away.
Neil Young.